The film begins with two modern-looking black men in their fancy underwear being auctioned off. They are chained by their necks, and the scene appears to be a slave market. Following this, the film returns to the beginning of the story in a flashback. It centers on two estranged half-brothers from the West Indies, Regis and Joel Gros Desir, who live very different lives. Joel is a monoracial black man who recently served time in prison for stealing an elderly woman's purse. He is currently living with his mother and his 9-year-old daughter. He is unemployed on a regular basis and blames racism for all of his problems, particularly his unemployment. He has, however, never seriously sought employment. Regis, on the other hand, is a biracial man. He is married to a white woman and they have a 9-year-old daughter. He lives in a prosperous town and is well integrated into upper-class society. Regis is employed at the local town hall as the mayor's assistant. Regis receives a phone call from his uncle one day, informing him that his father is dying and that it is the old man's final wish to meet all of his children. Regis, on the other hand, has no recollection of his deadbeat father because he was not present when Regis was a child. He then goes to dinner with his family, but his crazy wife threatens to get laid with other men if he does not pay one last visit to his father. He reluctantly agrees because he has no other option. The next day, Regis flies to his hometown, where his father lives. He runs into Joel at the airport, who has also come to see their father. The brothers, who haven't spoken in over a decade, put their differences aside and share a taxi. They meet up in the taxi on their way to their father's house. Regis tells Joel everything about his successful life, while the latter lies to cover up his failures out of embarrassment. When they arrive at their father's house, they are introduced to their aunt and several half-sisters. It turns out that their father traveled the world and had relationships with a plethora of women. This explains why Joel and Regis have different skin tones. When he sees his only two sons in front of him, the old man's eyes light up. He tells Regis and Joel before he dies that they will inherit a great treasure. This excites the brothers, who are eager to learn more about the treasure. To their dismay, all they receive as inheritance is a document of their ancestors' emancipation. This document was given to a few slaves by their owners in exchange for some extraordinary work or act. Regis and Joel's ancestors were apparently granted freedom long before slavery was legally abolished in the West Indies. They scoff at the inheritance, unconcerned about the symbolic value of this piece of paper. They then mockingly tear the paper up in front of their late father's sister's disapproving gaze. This enrages the elderly lady, so she decides to teach the brats a lesson. She casts a voodoo spell on them, transporting them to the 17th century, where slavery is still practiced. When Regis and Joel wake up in the next scene, they are naked except for their designer underwear in an open field. A couple of terrified black people run past them as the two wonder what happened. Two slave hunters arrive at the same time and capture the Gros Desir brothers. They are then taken to a slave market and sold to a landowner named Monsieur Jourdain. Jourdain assigns Joel to the farms, where he will work under the supervision of Henry, a brutal and deeply racist foreman, while Regis is assigned to the residents' kitchens. Soon after, the half-brothers discover that they have time-traveled to 1780, when slavery is still legal. The slaves are forced to listen to a priest read from a fake Bible about how black people should obey the whites the next day. However, because the Gros Desir brothers are the only ones who can read besides the whites, they refuse to agree with the contents. Regis even surprises the priest by reading him a line from the book. Later in the day, Joel arrives late to the field and is hit by Henry. Joel makes a break for it to escape the farm, but ends up hitting his head on a pole and knocking himself out. He is scourged in front of everyone because of his actions. That night, Regis is summoned to Monsieur Jourdain's office, where his ability to read is recognized. Jourdain praises him for being a smart slave and gives him the authority to control the other slaves alongside Henry. Meanwhile, Joel's wounds are being treated by Rosalie, a female slave. Joel has only known her for 5 minutes, but he has already developed feelings for her. He leans in for a kiss at just the right time, only to be turned down. Rosalie then confesses her feelings for a fellow slave named Isidore, much to Joel's dismay. Regis begins his new duty the next day by ordering and commanding other slaves to do their work. Joel is shocked to see his brother acting like a white person and accuses him of being self-centered. Regis, on the other hand, could care less and remains loyal to his new masters, reporting his work to Monsieur Jourdain throughout the day. Everyone in the White household eventually discovers Regis' ability to read and begins mocking him. They also make fun of his ability to play the piano. Regis plays the piano beautifully, much to everyone's surprise. However, this results in him being severely whipped by the whites. Regis is finally fed up, and the two brothers flee the plantation the next morning by secretly hopping in the carriage of a Jewish man named Isaac. When they arrive at Isaac's house, he approaches them and reveals that he was aware of their presence all along. The brothers beg him for mercy, but to their surprise, Isaac shows them great hospitality and care because Jews are also discriminated against. Monsieur Jourdain's henchmen soon arrive at Isaac's house in search of the two brothers. But before they are apprehended, Regis and Joel bid Isaac farewell and flee through the back door. They make their way to the beach, where they board an abandoned boat and set sail into the ocean. They are caught and imprisoned after crossing paths with a ship used to transport slaves to auctions. Finally, the Gros Désir brothers end up in the same slave market, where they are purchased by Jourdain's henchmen. Fortunately, on their way back to the plantation, the brothers are rescued by an African tribe known as the Maroons. It is revealed here that the tribe's members were all slaves before fleeing from their owners. The two are welcomed into the tribe and begin to chant with the tribe leader. Regis, who is married to a white girl, refuses to chant when the Maroons talk about killing the whites. This enrages the tribe, and they quickly turn on the brothers. Fortunately, Regis and Joel outrun the tribe and reach safety. The next day, the two wake up in an unknown location where they encounter their aunt, who has cast a spell on them. The brothers quickly realize that she was the one who sent them back in time. They beg her to break the spell and say they will go to any length to do so. The old woman initially refuses, but when the brothers persist, she gives them a hint. She informs them that the only way to return to the present is to return to the plantation and reunite with their ancestors, Isidore and Rosalie. She also instructs them to correct the error without further explanation. Before leaving, the woman leaves behind her special pipe, instructing the brothers to smoke it once they have completed their mission successfully. While the two are discussing how to handle the situation, Joel recalls seeing what appeared to be Isidore having oral intercourse with another man. He also has a video of the incident on his phone, which he shows to Regis. The two brothers become convinced that Isidore is homosexual and believe that this is the error that they are supposed to correct. Joel and Regis return to the plantation in the following scene. They try to bargain with Monsieur Jourdain about their punishment, but it doesn't work out. Instead, they are branded with the plantation's sigil. They then return to their huts and begin to plan their next move. Meanwhile, the whites are celebrating the wedding of Monsieur Jourdain's daughter inside the mansion. Seeing this as the ideal distraction, the brothers organize their own slave party. They steal a barrel of rum from the distillery in order to intoxicate and rekindle the romance between Isidore and Rosalie. However, their plan is derailed when Regis notices Joel making out with Rosalie due to his crush on her. Following that, the two brothers improvise and physically assist the couple in having an intercourse while they are sleeping. They are convinced that their mission there has been completed once this is completed. The brothers decide to exact revenge on the whites because they believe they can go home whenever they want. They storm the mansion, armed, and humiliate everyone. Regis begins destroying furniture and even slaps a white man, while Joel kisses Monsieur Jourdain's daughter. Henry bursts into the room with a gun and threatens the brothers. Regis and Joel, on the other hand, show no fear and proceed to use the pipe. Sadly, nothing happens when they smoke it. The magical pipe given by the old lady appears to have been replaced with an ordinary pipe. As a result of their actions, they are imprisoned and sentenced to death the next day. That night, the brothers become emotional and begin to reflect on their life choices. Regis discusses his failing marriage, while Joel admits to being broke and jobless. After a few hours, while the brothers are still sympathizing with one another, Henry arrives and transports them to the field where they are to be hanged. However, just before the execution, Monsieur Jourdain's son, Victor, flees into the forest because he cannot bear the sight. Rosaline pursues him and soon discovers that he has fallen into a nearby river. The entire family panics and rushes to the scene. Isidore, on the other hand, takes advantage of the uproar and saves the brothers, knocking out Henry in the process. He then commands them to flee for their lives, which they do. As the brothers flee, they come across Victor being swept away by the current. The two leap into the perilous river without hesitation. But much to Regis' surprise, Joel is unable to swim. This complicates his task even more, but he manages to save both his brother and Victor. Monsieur Jourdain, grateful to the brothers for saving his son's life, releases them. The half-brothers are also presented with the same emancipation document that their late father provided them with. Instead of accepting the freedom and the award, they ask Monsieur Jourdain to release Isidore and Rosalie and hand over the document. The Monsieur finds the request strange, but he agrees to it. The brothers have thus freed Isidore and Rosalie, but they still don't know where to find the magical pipe that will allow them to return to modern times. As the days pass, they gradually come to accept that they may never return to their time. Isidore and Rosaline say their goodbyes to the brothers and leave the plantation with the papers one day. As the two stand there watching them leave, Henry approaches them and orders them to return to work. He then pulls out his pipe and begins smoking. When he tries to humiliate the brothers by blowing smoke in their faces, they vanish, much to Henry's surprise. This implies that Henry was the one who stole the pipe. The brothers return to the present in the following scene, where they see their aunt standing beside them. Regis and Joel are relieved when they see her holding the original document. Several months have passed. Joel finds a regular job on a construction site, where he still complains about his low pay and claims it is because he is black. Meanwhile, Regis resumes his duties at the town hall. As he is about to leave his office one day, he is greeted by the mayor, who tells him a racist joke. Regis, no longer the person he once was, decides to confront the mayor before storming out. The scene then shifts to Regis and his wife, as well as Joel and his mother, conversing in Regis' living room. The two agree that their adventure brought them closer together as a family. However, an argument between their respective daughters results in the tearing of the emancipation document. The film concludes with Regis and Joel panickingly running towards their daughters.